When he returned to his bedroom, he passed by the room where his sister and her baby were staying, and he realized that both of them were asleep. They couldn't have made those noises that woke him up in the middle of the night. He approached his bedroom door and saw something moving on his bed. As he got closer to see what it was, he saw that it was the figure, that same porcelain figure he had brought home. He didn't just see it move. When he inspected it, he noticed that its face had changed, that it was showing its teeth.
Bienvenidos.
Welcome, everyone, to an assortment of horror stories, a collection of strange, bizarre stories, all very different from each other. Stories that are unique because of their protagonists, their context, the creatures, the entities, the phenomena that will appear in them. We invite you to relax and let yourselves be carried away, and we want to send a special greeting to everyone who listens to us at night, coming home from work or school, after a long day away from home or after working at home. I hope you're wrapped up in something warm and let yourself be carried away by the following stories, by the next Relatos de la Noche. Hello, Relatos de la Noche. My name is Alejandro and I'm from Torreon, Coahuila. Before I begin, I need to clarify something. I was always one of those people who thought that if you don't believe in something, it simply can't happen to you. I never believed in witchcraft, demons, or ghosts. And to be honest, I don't know if what happened to me has anything to do with the things I'm mentioning. It all started last year, during Christmas. My family and I, my parents, uncles, and cousins, traveled to some cabins in Mexico. We arrived on December 21st, and the first few days went by completely normally. Nothing out of the ordinary. One day, some people who worked at the place told us legends about goblins. They said that according to the local people, they had their little houses around there. However, they also emphasized to us that these were just stories and that those holes we saw could be from animals. That's why we didn't take it seriously. It was simply local folklore from the place we were visiting. On the last day, we decided to explore one last time. As we were walking, we found a hole next to a tree, covered with branches and dry leaves as if someone wanted to hide it. The hole looked big and spread over the roots of the tree. A cousin and I, while playing, said that it was surely a burrow for goblins. Our cousin scolded us and told us to leave it alone, that it was probably a rabbit burrow, so we kept walking. But when we came back through that same area, my cousin grabbed my shoulder and told me to wait. My cousin slowly walked away. He gave me a stick and challenged me, saying I didn't have the guts to destroy the hole. In my ignorance, laughing, I jumped on the branches and leaves, destroying them, and we ran out of there. And yes, maybe it has nothing to do with what happened afterwards, but I feel it was important to tell. When we returned to the city, the family separated. The following days were normal, until things started disappearing in my house. The first thing I lost were the remote batteries. At first, we didn't think much of it, but as the days went by, the problem continued to the point where we started blaming each other, and it caused arguments. In my house, I live with my parents, my two sisters, and myself. I'm the middle child, and we were all blaming each other. Yesterday, in broad daylight, I was in my room playing Minecraft while listening to music with headphones. When I use them, I usually daydream. The door is open in case someone talks to me. In front of my room, a few meters away, are the stairs, and next to them is my parents' room. I was very focused when, out of the corner of my eye, I saw someone going up the stairs and entering my parents' room. I didn't think much of it. I thought it was my little sister, who is 4 years old. A little while later, I started hearing her scream, calling for my mom. At first, it didn't seem strange to me because she's a little girl, but then the screams became desperate, getting louder and louder. Then I realized something that really threw me off. My parents weren't home. They had left about 2 hours ago. I jumped up and ran to my older sister's room, thinking she already had everything under control. I found her lying in bed and she turned to me, confused. At that moment, my little sister's crying sounded even louder. My sister jumped out of bed and I ran straight to my parents' room. I don't know why, but I remember feeling my face burning and my heart racing. I was moving so fast I didn't even turn the doorknob. I just burst through the door. What I saw there made me burst out laughing in disgust and fear. My little sister was huddled on the bed, completely red, crying, screaming in terror. Several meters away from me, on top of the TV stand, there was something. It was a horrible thing. It looked like a pig, like a wild boar, the same color, but it was bipedal and hunched over. Instead of hooves, it had hands. I don't remember exactly how many fingers, but they were hands, like a person's. When it looked up and saw me, those eyes, that look was human, and I could swear it was as scared as I was. I was completely paralyzed. My older sister's scream snapped me out of my shock, and then that thing let out a horrifying, mocking shriek, like a human trying to imitate the sound of a pig. Hey, hey! It jumped to the floor, and in a way I still don't understand, slid under my parents' bed. That bed isn't even 20 centimeters off the floor. I threw myself to the floor and managed to grab one of its legs, but the force with which it got in was so strong that I only managed to pull out some of its fur. I felt fur in my hand, but when I looked, it was gone. My older sister hugged my little sister while I yelled at them to be quiet, and we could still hear that thing under the bed, crawling, making the bed move, breathing rapidly like a very fat dog. Suddenly there was a creak like the floor was breaking. I crouched down immediately, but when I looked again, it was already gone. There was nothing there. We went to the living room and waited for my parents to return. We told them what happened. I wouldn't say they didn't believe us, but they just told us to stay calm, that we were all fine now, as if they didn't really want to accept it, even though the three of us were saying the same thing. Even so, my dad and I checked the whole house a few minutes later. Today, January 13th, strangely, without realizing it, we started finding all the things that had been lost. My sisters, my parents, and mine. I hope that thing is gone now. It just wanted to teach me a lesson for what I did with the burrow. If I'm right and it's related, and still it terrifies me to think what would have happened if it had stayed, especially with my sister. I repeat, I don't know if what happened in Mexico and this are connected. And honestly, I'd rather not find out anymore. I made a drawing of that. I'll share it with you in case you want to show it in the episode or on your social media. Thanks to the community and to Relatos de la Noche. Hello, community. Good evening. This story that I'm about to tell did not happen to me, but to a friend. I hope you like it. We come from a town in Michoacan where, in February, figures of the child Jesus are blessed. And many people usually carry their figure around as if it were a real baby. My friend and her family are very religious and very involved in the church. My friend was one of those people who slept with her child Jesus figure. At the time of what I'm about to tell you, one of her sisters had just given birth. She had just given birth and was spending her postpartum recovery at her parents' house, which is where my friend lived. She says that one night, in the early morning, she felt like going to the bathroom, for which she had to cross the yard. She says she heard noises in the kitchen as she passed through, and the cry of a baby. She obviously thought it was her sister getting up to feed the baby. She called her by her name, but there was no answer. She didn't find it strange and continued on her way. When she returned to her room, she walked past her sister and baby. She realized that both of them were asleep. And as she approached her room to enter, she saw something move on her bed in the darkness. As she slowly moved closer to see what it was, to find out whether it was an animal or something like that, she noticed that what was there, where something had just moved, was the figure of the Christ child. A figure that was smiling at her. She says she managed to see its teeth and they looked like those of an animal. Terrified, she ran outside and claimed she saw the devil's silhouette in the yard. She says she saw it just as it's described, with goat legs and very large horns. After this event, she went to church and the priest told her that the evil one always tries to attack those closest to God. They prayed for her for several days, but since then my friend changed her habits. She never slept with a figure of the child Jesus again. Hello community, my name is Alejandra, and I want to tell you about an experience that happened to me and that I still haven't been able to fully explain. If anyone has experienced something similar or knows what it could have been, I would really appreciate it if you let me know. We had recently moved into a new apartment. My mom, my sister, and I lived there. Unfortunately, my dad was no longer with us. I remember that the day I'm talking about wasn't special at all. It was one of those normal days that pass by without leaving a trace. At night, I had a small argument with my mom, and because of my tantrum, I decided to sleep in my room. I locked myself in, put on a movie, then another one. I lost track of time until I realized it was already between 3 and 4 in the morning. The apartment was still almost empty. It didn't have curtains, just simple blinds, the kind you hold up with a little stick. At some point, the blind fell down. Light from the apartments opposite mine shone into my room. I got up to fix it, but before I did, I stopped. For a while now, the room hadn't felt the same. I couldn't explain why, but something had changed. The silence felt different. The air was very cold. That's when I heard footsteps. They were heavy footsteps, very distinct, too loud for that place. They didn't sound like someone walking normally. They sounded like something very big was approaching, like the footsteps of a horse or an animal of that size. I tried to calm myself down. I thought maybe someone was coming back from work at that hour and that I was overreacting. And as I adjusted the window, I was looking up to make sure it closed properly. When I lowered my gaze and looked outside, that's when I saw it. There was a figure. It was very tall, easily about 2 meters. It looked like a dog or a wolf or something like that, but not quite. It was very skinny, bony, hunched over. It didn't look normal. It moved too fast. I saw her go up the stairs, come down them, and then disappear completely into the darkness, as if she had never been there. I felt a very strong pressure all over my body, as if it was hard for me to breathe. Several minutes passed before I could catch my breath. I felt like something had gotten in, so we checked everything, but nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Nothing had gotten into the house. And what impacts me the most, even now, is remembering exactly that moment when I saw it, when everything was still. There were no cars passing by. Not a single sound was heard. There were no lights on in the other apartments. At that moment, everything was completely dark, except for the light coming through my window. Since that night, I never looked out that window the same way again. That was all. If anyone has seen this before, some apparition that may have caused that around them, that makes it seem like the whole world stops. Please comment on it. I'll be watching. Hello, Uriel. Hello, everyone. I'm Jose Luis. I've listened to Relatos de la Noche for nearly 2 years. I found out about the channel thanks to my current partner, since we both like paranormal topics. I finally decided to share what happened to my best friend and me one night while camping. You see, we're from a small town in the state of Mexico, Xilotepec de Molina, Enriquez. Near there's an ecotourism park called Las Peñas. It's a well-known hill for its expert climbing routes, its views, and its areas for camping, hiking, or mountain biking. It's a place full of history and, above all, many legends. In fact, quite a few people claim that years ago people used to climb to the top of the hill to perform rituals. Some say they've heard wailing, and others claim to have seen balls of fire nearby. Despite all this, believe it or not, it's a peaceful place, nice to spend the day. That's why my best friend Carlos and I decided to go camping there. We had already done it before, although in other areas. That day was calm. We arrived around noon. It was Sunday, I remember it perfectly. When we arrived, the park caretaker was surprised to hear we planned to camp there. Probably because it was daytime, he let us in without any issue. There were quite a few people climbing in different spots. We set up near a small chapel that's right at the beginning of the path to the summit. At that point, you're already completely surrounded by forest. Once we were settled in, we gathered firewood for the campfire, as was our custom. We already had experience camping, so we knew how much firewood to gather to be comfortable and avoid accidents. Nothing unusual happened that afternoon. We explored a bit, ate, and as it started to get dark, we watched the other people gradually leave until we were completely alone. Before it got completely dark, I lit the campfire and we sat around it to talk. We talked about our days, about work, about things we still had to do. I remember that around 8 at night, a little dog showed up and stayed with us. He was calm, with a very good temperament. It even made me feel a certain sense of security having him there, as if he was watching over us. We kept talking for a while, but around midnight I realized that the firewood had run out. I'm not going to lie to you, that seemed strange to us because normally it would last longer, but I'm not going to lie to you, that seemed really strange to us. Normally it would last us much longer, but at that moment we didn't think it was anything serious. We just finished putting out the campfire and went into the tent. I wasn't sleepy, so I kept talking with Carlos. Suddenly we started hearing footsteps around the tent, close to us. At first I wasn't alarmed. I told Carlos it was probably the little dog walking around. We calmed down, but then we heard the footsteps again. I went out, looked around with the flashlight, and saw that the dog was lying down almost next to where we had made the campfire. He hadn't moved from there. I pointed the light at the source of the noises, but saw nothing. I thought maybe it was some other animal, but since the dog hadn't even woken up, I calmed down and went back to bed. A few minutes later, the footsteps came back. This time they sounded closer, as if something was circling our tent, then moving away and coming back. And then it would leave again. Carlos, already nervous, decided to go outside suddenly just as the noises started again, to see what it was and clear up our doubts. He went out and came back almost immediately. With a trembling voice, he told me that he had seen something. He said it was a small being with the face of an old man. Valid? Of course, I thought he was joking, but the seriousness with which he said it made me feel a fear that's hard to explain. I just told him that we should try to sleep, although that was no longer possible. The noises continued. Footsteps. The sound of leaves moving as if things were being thrown. My curiosity was so strong, I peeked out when I heard the noises nearby again. I went out shining the light toward where the dog was, and suddenly behind me, I heard Carlos say, "There it is." "That's it. Do you see it?" I put on my glasses and pointed the flashlight over there. That's when I was able to see it too. I only managed to see a small head with old man's features and a few gray hairs. As soon as I shined the light on him, he made a quick movement and hid behind the dog. I got up immediately and ran to where the animal was, shouting to Carlos, "Here it is! Here it is!" calling out to Carlos to come over and grab him. But there was nothing. The dog looking at me confused because I had woken him up. At that moment, I felt intense fear. My mind couldn't understand what I had seen or how that thing could disappear so quickly. I tried to find logical explanations, but I couldn't find any. That's how we spent the whole night. I couldn't sleep after that. I just told Carlos that if it wanted to do something to us, it would have already done it. But it wasn't like that. All through the early morning, the noises continued. At times, you could even hear a voice, a murmur. But we didn't want to look anymore. The sound stopped around 5 in the morning. As soon as the sun came up, we packed everything and left. A few days later, I told some people, but they didn't believe me. Carlos told me that the exact same thing happened to him. To this day, I'm not sure about what I saw. I've compared it to local animals. I've searched, I've asked around, but there's nothing that looks like that. Since that day, I haven't gone back to Las Piñas. I haven't camped again either. Intermission, subscribe, leave a like, share the podcast, buy my book, link in the description. I love you very, very much. Let's continue. First of all, I hope everyone in the Relatos de la Noche community is doing well. Greetings to Uriel Reyes and to everyone in general. My name is Ricardo Zaron, and I'm from the state of Mexico. Since I was a child, I was very sensitive to seeing and hearing presences. I even heard La Llorona, and on more than one occasion I saw a woman outside the cemetery in my community late at night. But the story I want to share today is about a series of events that happened to me along with some coworkers. After high school, I was recommended to work at a pharmaceutical company that offered good benefits for the area. One of them was the possibility to continue our studies. Since both the company and the university were a bit far from my parents' house, several coworkers and I decided to rent a house near the school. The house was big. On the ground floor, it had a large patio and parking space for 2 cars. Inside, there were 4 bedrooms, a hallway that connected all of them and led to the living and dining room, as well as the kitchen, the bathroom, and the stairs that led to the second floor. And the second floor was unfinished. They were just unfinished walls. The concrete slab was newly made, and it didn't have windows or doors. There was a lot of wood, construction materials, and tools, so it couldn't be lived in. That's why we decided to always keep the door to the second floor closed. There were 6 of us in the house. Lucia with her 2 5-year-old twin sons, her brother Gabriel, another roommate named Reuben, and me. We were all between 20 and 24 years old. The first few weeks, everything was completely normal. Lucia used to arrive first around 3 in the afternoon after picking up her kids from school. One day, while the kids were playing in the garden, she opened the front door, and as she entered, saw a boy about the size of her own children sitting in the dining room. When he saw her, the boy got up and ran to the bathroom. Lucia thought it was one of her children, but she immediately realized it wasn't. She was just entering the house. The twins were outside. She went to the bathroom but found no one. She only noticed that one of the dining chairs was out of place, as if someone had really moved it to get up. Sometime later, Reuben had a similar experience. He worked at night, and that day he didn't have early classes, so he returned to the house around 7 in the morning when all of us had already left. He went into his room and was falling asleep when he heard a child's laughter and the sound of a plastic ball bouncing down the bedroom hallway. Annoyed, he got up, thinking about scolding the kids so they would let him sleep. When he left his room, the noise stopped abruptly. He only managed to see the ball in the middle of the hallway, but there was no one else in the house. Small incidents started happening to everyone until the twins began telling us that they also saw a boy. They said they couldn't see him clearly, that he looked blurry, that on his face you could only make out the mouth, but nothing else. He would go into their room, grab their toys, make fun of them, stick out his tongue, and laugh. The children no longer liked being in the house. We as adults took it as a joke at first. We even went so far as to put talcum powder or flour in the hallway to see if footprints, like child-sized barefoot prints, would appear the next day or something like that. Lucia decided to talk to the landlord. He kind of laughed and said he didn't know anything, but even so, he sent a priest to bless the house. We assume it was mostly just to calm us down. He probably thought that if we believed in ghosts, something like that would calm us down too. But instead of getting better, the situation got worse. The entity started to appear more often. Sometimes, while we were in the dining room, it would peek out from the edge of the hallway by the bedrooms. We would hear its laughter and then the sound of its footsteps running toward the bathroom, as if it were a game, as if it wanted us to chase it. All of us saw it at some point, even if only out of the corner of our eye, and it seemed to enjoy it. At night, you could hear it open the bathroom door and walk barefoot down the hallway. You could hear it laughing, playing with things, and when one of us went out to take a look, it would run back to the bathroom to hide. Since the kids didn't want to sleep there anymore, many times Lucia would take them to their grandmother's house, so we completely ruled out that it was them. One weekend night, it was just Gabriel, Reuben, and me. It was around 8 at night, and we were in Reuben's room, trying to decide what to buy for dinner. Suddenly, we heard the bathroom door open. We fell silent, knowing what was coming. We heard it start walking down the hallway, getting closer to where we were. It was laughing, but trying to stifle its laughter, like a child about to play a prank. "Mom?" It reached the door. It banged on it hard, and with a voice that wasn't a child's, it said, "I want you to get out of my house." None of us knew how to react. We weren't prepared for that. We thought it was going to be something like before, but this was different. This was much more serious. When we went into the hallway, nothing was left. We went out to do the shopping, still very nervous, wondering if it had really happened. But the three of us agreed on the same thing. We all experienced it the same way. When we came back, the house was a mess. The dining room chairs were out of place. Some were turned over. There were broken dishes on the kitchen floor. The bedrooms had unmade beds, open drawers, and clothes scattered around. It looked like someone had broken in to steal, but nothing was missing. While we were putting everything back in order, we sat in the dining room to talk about what happened. At that moment, right in front of us, the door leading to the second floor opened by itself. A couple of minutes later, we started hearing moans coming from upstairs, moans that sounded like a woman. We heard footsteps, wood falling, tools and metal clanging together. Amid the noises, we heard the same voice, the one from outside the room, cursing and saying he wanted to be close, alone, telling us to get out. We didn't think twice. It probably happened in a minute, but it felt like an eternity to me. I grabbed my phone, whatever I could, my friends did too, and we left the house. We locked up and didn't return that night. The impact was so great that we couldn't stay there anymore. We returned for our things during the day, but no one stayed overnight again. Even though we lost the rent and the deposit, we just couldn't. That's my story, Uriel. And even though it sounds pretty intense, I swear everything I'm telling you is true. Thank you for reading it. And thank you, community, for believing me. It's very important to me. Hello, Uriel. I'm Enrique and want to share something that happened to me recently. It was on Friday, November 7th in the early morning. I was on my honeymoon with my wife. We went to Ixtapa and stayed at the Hotel Cristal. I mention the name in case anyone else has experienced something similar. The room was big with plenty of space. Coming in on the right side, there was a small closet, then the bathroom door. The bed was right in front of the entrance. In front of it was a desk, and next to it the dresser with the television. I'm writing this because I think it's important. It was early in the morning. My wife went to the bathroom without turning on the light. I don't know why, but I felt it when she got up. And then I heard her say the same thing twice. It can't be. Where am I? I also heard that he bumped into things a couple of times. When he returned, he said he didn't recognize the place when he woke up. The dimensions didn't seem the same as the previous days, even though he had already gone to the bathroom in the dark without any problem. He says he bumped into things because he felt as if there was a wall in the middle of the room. He stumbled several times trying to reach the bathroom door. When he finally opened the door, as he tried to turn on the light, he touched something that felt like a pipe. But there wasn't one in the bathroom. She screamed at me in fear, so I turned on the light. It was 3:02 in the morning. She explained everything to me. She swore she wasn't in the room, that she had walked somewhere else. I remember that, trying to calm her down, I joked, "You went to the upside down." She lay back down, and I made sure she fell asleep. Then I got up to go to the bathroom. That's when I experienced something horrible. I entered the bathroom and stood by the toilet, just like the previous days, like always. But I felt something. I swear to you, I felt a presence. The clear feeling that someone was watching me from the shower. Instinctively, I turned to my right, toward where the sink and the mirror were. In the reflection, I saw a woman. She was in the shower, naked. Her body had many open cuts, recent wounds. I couldn't see her face, only the body reflected in the mirror. I got goosebumps all over. I closed the door. I went back to bed. I didn't scream so I wouldn't scare my wife. I held back my fear. I didn't say anything. I washed my hands without looking up again. I turned off the light and closed the bathroom door. Then I placed a piece of furniture in front of it. I don't know what it was or why I saw it, but I swear it's true. It was there. That image, even though it was in the mirror, is still pretty clear in my head. And I swear to you, it will always be there. Be very careful when you stay at a hotel, when you wake up at night, when you feel like you're in a different place than where you went to sleep.